The storm had been building all evening, each peal of thunder closer, louder, until it felt like the sky itself might split open. I wasn't planning on leaving the apartment. I had no plans, no party invites, and no costume for Halloween. But the restless weight of the storm seemed to press down on me, pushing me out the door and into the cold, wet streets. The city, so alive just hours earlier, had taken on a ghostly stillness. The puddles on the sidewalk reflected orange streetlights, and the distant sound of laughter echoed faintly, swallowed quickly by the rain. I walked without purpose, pulling my coat tighter as the wind howled around me, until I saw it. A costume shop I didn't recognize. Its entrance was nestled between two buildings that looked older than the rest of the street, their facades crumbling as though time itself had given up on them. The shop's window was fogged, but a faint amber light flickered from within. Above the door hung a sign I couldn't read, the letters distorted by streaks of water cascading down the wood. Something about it drew me in. Maybe it was the warmth emanating from inside, or the strange compulsion to escape the storm. Or perhaps it was the faint melody that seemed to hum just beneath the sound of rain, a lilting tune that wrapped itself around me like a whispered promise. The door creaked as I pushed it open, and the smell of old leather and dust washed over me. The shop was dimly lit, its walls lined with racks of costumes, masks, and odd trinkets that seemed too peculiar to wear. Despite the clutter, it felt too empty, the shadows stretching unnaturally long in the corners. Ah, a late customer. The voice made me jump. From behind the counter emerged a man whose presence seemed to command the room. He was tall and thin, his face gaunt but strangely elegant, like a figure pulled from a faded painting. His eyes gleamed as though lit from within, and his thin lips curved into a smile that didn't quite reach them. "Looking for something unique?" he asked, his voice smooth and too practiced, as though he'd been rehearsing those words for centuries. I nodded, unsure of what to say. I need a mask for a party." The man's smile widened, and he gestured for me to follow. "Then you've come to the right place." He moved through the aisles with an uncanny grace, the faint scent of something metallic trailing behind him. I followed, my shoes squeaking faintly on the warped floorboards. The deeper into the shop we went, the more surreal it became. The masks lining the walls seemed to watch me, their painted eyes gleaming like wet ink. Some were grotesque, others hauntingly beautiful, but all of them felt alive in a way I couldn't explain. Then he stopped. "This," he said, reaching for a mask displayed on a pedestal, "is the one for you." The mask was exquisite, carved with delicate precision. It was bone white, with faint veins of gold and silver running through it like cracks in porcelain. Its eye holes were narrow, almost feline, and its lips curled in a subtle, enigmatic smile. But what struck me most was the texture. It wasn't wood or plastic or fabric. It felt fleshy, warm. I hesitated as he handed it to me. The mask seemed to pulse faintly in my hands, as though it had a heartbeat of its own. "Try it," the man urged. His eyes gleamed brighter now, anticipation simmering beneath his calm demeanor. Something about his gaze unsettled me, but I didn't want to seem rude. With trembling hands, I raised the mask to my face and pulled the straps tight. The world went dark for a moment, the sound of the storm outside muffling as though I'd submerged my head underwater. And then, clarity. The mask fit perfectly, its weight balancing against my skin like a second face. A strange warmth spread through me, a sensation that was equal parts comforting and suffocating. "Perfect," the man said, his smile widening impossibly. "It suits you." I didn't know how to respond. My reflection in the cracked mirror near the counter was both familiar and alien. My features were still there, but they were sharper, more defined, as though the mask had merged seamlessly with my face. "How much?" I asked, my voice trembling. The man's smile faltered. "Oh, it's not about money. The mask chooses its wearer. Consider it a gift." I wanted to protest, but his tone left no room for argument. Before I could say anything, he was ushering me out the door, his hand cold and firm on my back. "Enjoy your evening," he whispered, as the door slammed shut behind me. The party was in full swing by the time I arrived. I hadn't even intended to go, but the mask seemed to demand it, filling me with an unshakable confidence. The streets were slick with rain, and the sound of revelry spilled from the brownstone's open windows. Inside, the air was thick with heat and laughter. People danced in elaborate costumes, their faces hidden behind cheap plastic masks and glittering paint. Compared to them, my mask felt otherworldly, a piece of art that commanded attention. "You look amazing," someone shouted over the music, their words slurring from too much punch. I smiled beneath the mask, a strange sense of satisfaction blooming within me. As the night wore on, that feeling grew. It wasn't just the compliments or the envious glances. It was something deeper, a power I couldn't quite name. Conversations seemed to bend around me, people hanging on every word I said. Even the air seemed to shift when I moved, as though I had become the center of some invisible gravity. But then the first pang of unease struck. I stepped into the bathroom to catch my breath, peeling back the mask to splash water on my face. But as I tried to remove it, the straps didn't budge. Panic flared. I tugged harder, but the mask clung to my skin like a second layer, the edges now fused seamlessly to my face. My reflection stared back at me, its expression subtly wrong. My eyes were mine, but the smile, twisted and too wide, belonged to someone else. "Help," I whispered to the empty room, but even my voice sounded foreign. Something inside the mask shifted, a faint, almost imperceptible ripple. And in that moment I realized I wasn't wearing the mask, it was wearing me. The mirror in the bathroom seemed to pulse with an unnatural rhythm, as though the mask wasn't content with merely clinging to my face. It was alive, and it wanted me to know it. The longer I stared, the more my reflection twisted, a distortion of who I had been. The party outside the bathroom was still roaring, laughter and music bleeding faintly through the walls. But in this room, time felt wrong. My breathing was loud and shallow as I tried, again and again, to pull the mask off. It didn't move, not even a millimeter. My nails clawed at the edges where the mask met my skin, but the line was gone. The flesh around my jaw and cheekbones was smooth, seamless. Every desperate tug sent a jolt of searing pain through my skull. "Please," I whispered, though I didn't know who I was pleading with. The mirror rippled faintly, the distorted face in its surface grinning wider than I could ever manage. And then I heard it, a whisper, soft and low, curling around my thoughts like smoke. "Remember." I stumbled backward, clutching the sink. The room spun around me, the walls bending inward as though the mask was warping reality itself. "What do you want from me?" I hissed. The whisper came again, louder this time. "You were never you. You were always us." The words chilled me to my core, their meaning sliding through my mind like oil. My memories began to fragment, as though they'd been yanked from my grasp. My name felt foreign, my past a puzzle with too many missing pieces. I pushed out of the bathroom, stumbling back into the thrumming chaos of the party. The lights were too bright, the music too loud. The faces of the other guests swam before me, their masks shifting grotesquely in the dim light. "Hey, are you okay?" A woman in a sequined dress approached me, her voice barely cutting through the fog in my head. I tried to respond, but the mask tightened, and my voice came out strangled. "Fine," I managed. though the words sounded hollow. She frowned, her eyes lingering on my mask. "That's really realistic. Where did you get it?" Her question triggered something deep within me. The memory of the costume shop flickered, but it felt hazy, distant, like it belonged to someone else. "I don't know," I muttered, brushing past her and out the front door. The chill of the night hit me like a slap, but even the cold felt distant. My thoughts were slipping further away, replaced by something alien. The mask wasn't just changing my face, it was digging into my mind, erasing me one piece at a time. By the time I stumbled home, the mask's voice was louder than my own thoughts. It spoke in a constant, insidious murmur, filling my head with fragments of lives that weren't mine. I saw a young woman in a red cloak running through a forest, her face pale with terror. I felt the weight of an axe in my hands, the spray of blood warm against my skin. I heard laughter, dark and triumphant, as a crowd jeered at a man dangling from a noose. Each memory burrowed into my mind, displacing pieces of myself. "Stop!" I shouted, slamming the door behind me. My apartment was dim and quiet, the only light coming from the street lamp outside. But the mask didn't stop. "You wanted to be seen," it whispered, its voice dripping with malice. "Now you will be remembered." I grabbed a knife from the kitchen, my hands shaking. With trembling fingers, I tried to wedge the blade beneath the mask. The moment the cold steel touched it, the mask screamed. The sound wasn't loud. It was inside my head, a deafening, mind-rending wail that sent me to my knees. Blood dripped from my nose, the pressure in my skull unbearable. The knife clattered to the floor as I gasped for air. "You can't fight me," the mask hissed. "You belong to me now." I crawled to the coffee table, where my laptop sat untouched. My hands fumbled as I opened the browser, typing in a desperate search. Mask won't come off. The results were absurd. Cheap costume pranks, articles about face paint, ridiculous urban legends. But one thread caught my eye. The living mask, a cursed relic that consumes its wearer. My blood ran cold as I clicked the link. The post was long, written in frantic, disjointed sentences. It described a mask crafted centuries ago by a cult obsessed with immortality. They had infused it with their own essence, ensuring their survival through the lives of its wearers. "The mask feeds on identity," the writer had scrawled. "Each wearer becomes another voice in its collective consciousness. To remove it, you must pass it on, but beware. The longer you wear it, the less of yourself remains. Pass it on." The words hung in the air like a noose. "No," I muttered, shaking my head. I couldn't do it. I couldn't condemn someone else to this nightmare. "If you don't," the mask whispered, its tone almost playful now, "you'll vanish completely. You'll become nothing, just another shadow in my collection." Tears streamed down my face as I fought to think clearly. The mask was lying. It had to be. There had to be another way. But deep down, I knew it was telling the truth. Every second I delayed, I felt myself slipping further away. My name was gone now, my memories tangled beyond recognition. I had no choice. The mask chuckled softly as I stepped out into the street, its voice triumphant. The storm had cleared, and the city was alive with revelers, their laughter and joy cutting through the night. Someone would notice me. Someone would ask about the mask. And when they did, I would offer it to them. "It's yours," I would say, my voice sweet, my soul fading. "Consider it a gift." The city was alive in the early hours, the remnants of Halloween revelry lingering in the streets, laughter spilled from a nearby bar, blending with the honk of distant car horns and the hum of neon signs. But to me, the noise was muffled, filtered through the mask's suffocating presence. "They'll see you," it whispered, its voice a cruel melody that tangled in my mind. "They'll want what you have." My heart pounded as I scanned the crowd, searching for someone, anyone, who might be drawn to the mask. The idea sickened me, but the mask's grip tightened with each passing second. My memories had unraveled completely. I could no longer recall my name or even the contours of my own face beneath its cursed embrace. The mask was winning. At the edge of the sidewalk, a young man leaned against a lamppost, scrolling on his phone. He wore a skeleton costume, its cheap fabric torn at the seams. His gaze flicked up, landing on me. For a moment, our eyes locked, and I saw his expression shift. Curiosity first, then unease. "That's a pretty intense mask," he said, half smiling as I approached. I wanted to scream at him to run, to look away, to save himself. But the mask didn't let me. My voice came out smooth, confident, nothing like the person I'd once been. "Do you like it?" I asked, tilting my head. My hands rose of their own accord, brushing along the mask's edges as if presenting it like a prize. "Yeah," he admitted, stepping closer. "It's creepy, but cool." The mask purred in delight, its voice thrumming against my skull. "Yes, this one. He will take us. He will become us." The young man hesitated, his hand hovering near the mask's edge. My heart screamed in protest, but I couldn't stop it. The mask guided me, my movements deliberate, practiced. "Try it on," I said, my tone honey smooth. "It's unforgettable." For a moment he seemed entranced, his fingers brushing the mask's edge. The mask surged, its presence writhing like a parasite, anticipating its next host. But then a flicker of doubt crossed his face. He stepped back, his brow furrowed. "I don't know. It's kind of weird, isn't it?" The mask recoiled, tightening its grip on me in anger. I gasped as pain lanced through my head, the whispers growing louder, more insistent. "You'll never be free," it hissed. "You belong to me." "No," I choked out, the word tasting like broken glass. The young man's expression twisted in confusion. "Are you okay?" Something snapped inside me. Whether it was desperation or a final spark of defiance, I didn't know. But I turned and fled, the mask's furious screams filling my mind. "You'll never escape. You are nothing without me." I ran blindly through the city, my breaths ragged, my vision blurring. The mask's voice clawed at me, its whispers turning into a cacophony of rage. The streets grew quieter as I left the crowd behind, plunging into the desolate heart of the city. I stumbled into an alley, collapsing against a graffiti-covered wall. My hands clawed at the mask again, ignoring the searing pain. "Let me go," I sobbed, tears streaming down my face. "Please just let me go." The mask laughed, a sound that was both mocking and triumphant. "There is no you without me. I am all that remains." In the dim light of the alley, something caught my eye, a shard of broken glass glinting in a puddle. My trembling hand reached for it, the edges biting into my palm as I gripped it tightly. "You want a host?" I whispered, my voice shaking. "Take this instead." Before the mask could respond, I drove the shard into its surface. The world erupted in a blinding flash of pain and light, the mask's scream splitting the air. It tore away from my face, its fleshy edges ripping like old fabric. Blood dripped down my skin as I collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. For the first time in what felt like eternity, I could breathe. I could feel my face again. The mask lay a few feet away, writhing like a wounded animal. Its once pristine surface was cracked, its whispers now faint and disjointed. I stared at it, my heart pounding with equal parts relief and terror. But the victory was short-lived. The mask's cracks began to heal, its movements growing stronger. It wouldn't stop. It would never stop. With trembling hands, I picked it up and hurled it into the nearest storm drain. The mask vanished into the darkness, its voice fading as it was swallowed by the rushing water. I staggered to my feet, the alley spinning around me. My face throbbed, my reflection in a nearby puddle, unrecognizable beneath the blood and tears. I was free, but I knew the mask wasn't gone. It would find another. Somewhere, someday, someone would hear its whispers, and they wouldn't be able to resist.